There's much to do around Crawfordsville with our many shops, restaurants, and activities. Thank you for watching and welcome to Crawfordsville.
I'm Jim Johnson, your host, and we're here at Backstep Brewing Company. Let's go ahead and head inside, talk to owners Jim and Pat, and learn a little bit more about what happens here. You and Jim are both firefighters, obviously.
Correct.
That's how you two met.
Correct.
And were you both firefighters, still currently firefighters?
We are firefighters at Pike Township Fire Department in Marion County.
And how long have you been a firefighter?
14 years.
So obviously that's where the theme and name and everything came for Backstep. Take us through the process of that and just where that that idea originated from and how you guys came to that.
Okay, so backstep is a term that we use in the fire service for the two guys that are in the back seat. You have your driver, which is the engineer. You have the officer, who's in charge of the apparatus. And then you have the two guys in the back, which are backsteppers. And they do all the work. So that's kind of where the term came from. And we felt like it fit the brewery name perfectly. So that's why we wanted that.
Why firefighting for you? What is it about that?
Man, that's a good question. It's like anything to where a big decision for me, it's multifaceted. It was never one thing that drew my attention. I had been, like I said, in the bar business for years, and it had been very lucrative for me, but something was missing, that calling that the fire department has for a lot of people. So something was missing from my life, and when I was still in Key West, Florida, working at the Green Parrot Bar, I had the opportunity to volunteer to make sure I liked that career down there. It's the southernmost volunteer fire station down Big Copper Key in Monroe County. So I volunteered there for a year, made sure I loved it because I didn't want to walk away from a really, really good job at the Green Parrot. But I knew my heart was into this, and so I looked more and more into it, came up to Indianapolis and got on the job. But like I said, there wasn't one thing that led me to it. It was a series of decisions. I had an uncle that was in Chicago. Just a lot of signs over the years pointed me into that direction, and the need to serve is what finally got me there.
So how long have you and Jim been friends? And
So we've known each other since we both were hired at the fire department. But I was promoted to engineer, and I took a position that put me at the same station that Jim was at. And we were both big craft beer drinkers, so we naturally kind of gravitated towards one another. When we were off shift, we would go out for beers all the time, and we would go to breweries and kind of talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and just kind of developed an idea for what we were looking for when we opened the brewery.
Well, you talk about your brewers and the beer that you guys are able to put together, the product that you guys put out there. Very quickly, you guys took some recognition outside of Crawfordsville and outside of the state of Indiana. What makes the beer that Backstep brews so unique?
Josh and now Kyle. I don't think we do anything. People always think it's these super secret recipes, and it's just, in my opinion, watching your variables. The more variables can control in brewing, the cleaner your beer will be. Because I don't think a lot of ours is just centuries old German recipes. We're not reinventing any of this, but we're trying to execute it as cleanly as possible. So if you're controlling your temperatures and yeast and water, the more you can control those variables, the more you can direct that beer.
in the back with head brewer Kyle, where all the magic happens. And Kyle, what goes into putting together a good batch of beer?
So for me, a lot of it's, good ingredients and then just paying a lot of attention to what you're doing. Brewing can be simple or as complicated as you want it to be. So Josh and I have really worked on, figuring out our system, hitting the right temperatures, hitting the right gravities, which is like our sugar content, but basically paying attention from start to finish with good ingredients to start with, making sure our process is really dialed in, and then just basically, paying attention from start to finish to make sure we get that quality product at the end, and then just keeping an eye on it the whole way through. So basically, we start with grain, we add water, we're creating a sugar contented, it's called wort, so it's basically sugar water is what I like to call it, so it's like beer tea. From there, we're going to boil it, add our hops, anything else that we may be adding to it, whether it's fruit, different salts to give it different flavors, transferring into one of these tanks behind us, and then we're pitching yeast, fermenting, transferring, carving, and then
Normally a lot louder out here whenever you guys are actually in the brewing process. What equipment is in this room?
So in this room, we're actually running a 7-barrel Blickman system. So we start with our RO tank, which is basically a vessel for water. We have a hot liquor tank, which is just basically a big hot water tank that somebody would like have in their house, but ours is a lot bigger. From there, we go into what's called a lauter tun or mash tun, which is basically just a giant mixing bowl. So grain comes in, water comes in, we mix that together. There's a couple different processes within that, but basically we're getting sugar transformation. And then we transfer to our third kettle, which is a boil kettle, which is just like a giant pot you put on top of your stove. We bring it up to boiling. From there, we've got a heat exchanger, which is basically you have wort coming in, you have cold water coming in, and that's transferring heat. And then we go into fermenters and bright tanks. So behind us, the taller ones, further to the south, are fermenters, and then that's where the yeast is doing all its active ingredients. And then these tanks right behind us are bright tanks, which are carbonation vessels, or you can serve off of them can or keg if you want to.
Obviously, there's more than just beer here. So what else do you guys have behind the bar?
Yeah, we have a full bar. We have quite a wide range of whiskeys and bourbons, which is a personal favorite of mine, so I'm really excited about that, and some really good gins as well. So we have some craft cocktails that we can make. A lot of our bartenders are really gifted in that way, but obviously the beer is the star, so yeah.
You mentioned your bourbon. You like bourbon. What about on the beer side? Is there something that you like in particular?
Yeah, the gosas that we serve here are the absolute best. I think they're some of the best sours I've ever had. We just tapped the raspberry gosa, and I'm drinking that consistently. So that's pretty much my favorite one.
So you're from out of state originally. What would you say makes Backstep and the beer that they brew unique from other places that you've been?
I think Backstep just became the place to go. It's a community kind of center. I like to think of it that way, because not only are we a bar, but now we have food so people can come and eat, and that's a real bonding experience. We do stuff with other community partners for different kinds of charities. We've got games, live music. We try and bring events to the community, and I think that that's what makes us special compared to other bars. We get to interact so much with the brewers in terms of them explaining to the bartenders what we're serving, so I think that there's a better service there to the customer, because the brewers can't be there to talk to every single person, and we are. And so I think that they do a really good job of educating us, and also the testing, right? Like, they go through multiple rounds to make sure they're putting out the best product. That's why we delayed canning for so long, because we wanted to do it the right way. And I think that that's what, that extra step, that extra care and thought, and checking in with different parts of the team is what makes us more successful.
I like the darker beers. So right now it's the Old Ale or the Black Hat, the Old Mill Stout. That's always a good go-to. Primarily stick with their beers. Occasionally I'll venture out and try somebody else's, which they do have other brewers on tap. But generally I like to go to the other brewers and try them in-house. So, but the darker beers, the Black Hat, the Old Mill Stout, and the Old Ale, they have good IPAs. I'm not really an IPA drinker or a light beer drinker, so it's kind of, but they have had a couple that I've tried and I've liked well. They have a good bourbon selection, whiskey. You can pretty much get anything you want here, and now you can get food.
So when you started looking outside of Indianapolis and you landed on Crawfordsville, what was it about Crawfordsville, and why did you guys decide Crawfordsville is where you wanted to begin?
Well, there were a couple things. One, we liked what the mayor was doing and being progressive on trying to bring things to Crawfordsville, and so that's really what we were looking at. We wanted a community that would accept a brewery and want a brewery. There are a lot of communities that, believe it or not, that if you try and open a brewery, you'll have a lot of the community who actually don't want it. So that was our first thing. We wanted to go into a community that wanted a brewery.
What goes into coming up with a new recipe, coming up with a new beer? How does that process work?
So luckily Josh, who is our executive brewer, he's got a very extensive brewing background and is very well connected. So it comes down to a lot of research to begin with. We come up with an idea of, all right, well, we think we want this style, or we want something that's going to do well in this season, and then it's like, okay, well, we'll narrow it down from there. Look at examples from history, doing some reading, who in the area is brewing it. So we'll go to places to try something, take notes about what we like, what we don't like, try to build a recipe from there, brew it, and make adjustments as we're going.
And how many beers do you guys have on tap, I guess, on a regular basis? Some of them are seasonal, obviously.
Somewhere within, there's usually 12, around 12 here. It's no set number. We try and keep the core beers up to date and brewed as quickly as possible. So you'll see Florian almost year round, unless it had a real high spike in sales. That's the only time you see it not brewed in time and finished by the last keg running out. Other than that, we've been floating right around 12, 13 right now.
So your cores, you try to keep that at a specific number. You want to expand on those?
4-ish is like a reasonable core for us. We think it helps with just marketing in the tap room that you can come in every time and get one of those 4 pints all the time. It's sort of a different mindset. You consistent people are people who like that tradition, want that same beer every time, but other people need rejuvenation. And I think when you have the two, you got a good choice all the time.
Yeah. If you have too many core beers, then you'll start taking away from your seasonals, because you got to keep up with all your core beers, and then you don't have time to brew your seasonal. So you always got to find that balance of those solid core beers that you want to kind of cover the variant of different beers, but at the same time you want something new to surprise customers when they come in as well.
Well, so when you talk about the core beers, what else do you have here available behind you?
So of our core beers, Florian, we've got 451, which is the light lager. So it's a traditional German style lager, low ABV, low bitterness, very approachable, easy drinking beer. You can sit there, have it outside. Lawnmower beer is probably the best description for it. The Dunkel, which is a dark wheat beer, and then what else are we? Dunkel, the
Goza ended up being, by demand, a core beer. We knew we wanted to make it at least seasonal once a year, and it would make a big batch and it would last, but the demand for the prickly pear is very high, so that has indeed become a core. Seltzer may see a core appearance, or at least a very long season, like 3/4 season, and we will be flavoring that differently. So that might end up being the fifth core if you want to talk about it technically that way.
Yeah, and I think the oatmeal stout as well.
Oatmeal stout and oatmeal stout variant. So it depends on how you look at it. There may be actually 5, 6, but we started off with 4, and kind of the public is sort of making up our mind on what it's actually going to be.
We're going to be taking a step into the kitchen here in a little while and looking at some of the food that you have available. Talk about that process and being able to get your kitchen in shape.
Man, long process, long development, long research. Just like anything, like Pat mentioned earlier, we don't jump on an idea right away. We kick it around, we chew on it, we research it. We don't go out and spend $60,000 on equipment. We try and be selective with that as well. So the kitchen was a long time coming. We just think it's time. It's going to increase beer tourism, length of stay, and just if we're going to do food, we're going to do it as correctly as we do with the beer. It's not going to be anything less than. So the more we looked into that, the more serious we got. We found Dan, which is like Josh and Kyle, but in the kitchen, which you've probably already come to find out. We just thought it's time for us to take that next step because it has a lot of huge inherent risk. Your cost of labor is going up, your cost of food. So there is risk involved with adding food, but we are ready and we're going to do it the best we can. And I have zero regrets because the food is coming out outstanding.
In the kitchen with Chef Dan and Chef Dan. You guys have been serving ever since restaurants have been allowed to do dine-in.
Correct.
But what kind of work behind the scenes have you guys been doing over the last several months and since you joined Backstep?
Well, I pretty much joined in December, so it's been a long journey. And before that, they had plans to have a chef in here, and they just didn't really get anybody. So ever since then, we've been working on the hood system, getting everything up to par and regulation, and putting new floors in, got new equipment, so a lot of different things. Sealed off the elevator shaft. This is a really old building, so we got a lot of different things we got to deal with. So thanks for being patient with us. It's going to be worth it in the end.
I've already started in on some of the bread pudding, one of the desserts that Dan has available here. But Dan, take us through your test kitchen menu to this point.
Test kitchen menu, we have 2 sausages, a brat, and a chorizo. Both are very popular. Like I said, we cook everything in-house, so we make the bread, all the condiments, the beer mustard, and we cook the bratwurst in the dunkel for extra flavor. And then we also have a good vegetarian sandwich. It's actually a vegan option. And the steak sandwich, which is probably our most popular, with the nice spicy Asian chimichurri.
What are your plans for the menu as you develop this menu for Backstep? Right now you're in the test kitchen phase, but what are you planning to add to the menu coming up?
We'd like to practically double the menu in size. We're going to be adding some loaded fries, like poutine, carne asada fries, chili fries, then probably like 3 or 4 more appetizers and rotating desserts, and always rotating specials to keep you guys entertained and interested.
So when we think about entrepreneurship and maybe some other entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial hopefuls that will be coming along here in Crawfordsville or anywhere really, I guess what would be your biggest words of wisdom, advice? What would you want them to know? Some things that you guys have learned along the way.
And getting through this COVID situation, I would say keeping your overhead low. Crawfordsville kind of allowed us to not have huge rent payments. That was awesome for us. Being able to buy this building years ago and owning it, I didn't have the rent guy knocking on my door in bad times because there was plenty of other bills to pay. So overhead and research before you go into it. Don't just jump into it. The restaurant business is insane. If you don't know anything about it, I would at least sink some time into being a part-timer somewhere so you kind of get the feel, because it's a strange and very dynamic business. So do a little homework, do some research, maybe have some experience in the field before you go into it. Because I know the bar business from the outside is very romantic looking, because you see just the stage at night and how easy it is because they're pros, but it's the working things behind it, the decision making, and all those little things that add up to a good show every night. It can be very romantic and very misleading from the outside, but it's hard like any other industry.